Alright, this is how you do the calculations for estimates of standard deviation of group data. Some students were having a little trouble. You have two formulas to choose from, and you have to decide which one works better for you. The text provides this one down here, which is based on the shortcut formula. The shortcut formula for sample standard deviation is let's see, n times sum of the x squareds minus sum of the x squareds over n times n minus 1. And that whole thing is square rooted. That is the shortcut formula for standard deviation. And you can see the only change they make is they have some f's in there because there's a frequency, and instead of it being all the values, it's just the midpoints of the values of the classes because we don't actually have all the values. And in the same way, the formula they provide in ALEX, they use a slightly different notation, but this formula here is based on the very first formula for sample standard deviation, which was given, which is the sum of the values minus the mean squared over n minus 1. So on this one, you have n times n minus 1 on the bottom. On this one, you have n minus 1, but the numerators don't match. So don't get confused. The one where you have to figure out the mean uses n minus 1. The one where you just figure out the sum of the x squareds and the sum of the x's, or in this case, when you're doing these guys, you'd have to figure out sum of the frequencies times the midpoint squared and sum of the frequencies times the midpoints. Now when you do that, you use n times n minus 1. When you do the other one, which kind of looks like this one, and you have to figure out the average, you divide by n minus 1 only. Okay. So it's not difficult if you can keep your equation straight to figure out what needs to be done. So I'm going to do the textbook formula first, and then I'll do the other one after, so you can see with me that they come out to the same answer. Well, the first thing I do, no matter what formula I'm using, is figure out the midpoints of the classes, which are 725, 775, 825, and 875. Having figured that out, I can then do the frequencies times the midpoints and take the sum of that by going 6 times 725 plus 12 times 775 plus 9 times 825 plus 3 times 875. And even though it's possible to do that in your head, I'm not that advanced, so I'm going to use the ALEX calculator. Alright, so I'm going to do 6 times 725, that's the midpoint of the first class, plus 12 times 775, midpoint for the second class, plus 9 times 825, that's third class midpoint, and 3 times 875. And they're telling me it's 23,700. So that goes back here. And I have that. Now I'm going to do this calculation, which is sum of the frequencies times the midpoint squared. So on my calculator, I'm going to go 6 times 725 squared plus 12 times 775 squared plus 9 times 825 squared plus 3 times 875 squared. And we'll see what that comes out to. So once again, we go back here, and it's 6 times 725 squared plus 12 times 775 squared plus, plus, don't want that in the exponent, plus 9 times 825 squared plus, did it again, arrow over, plus 3 times 875. I'll just hit the squared button this time. Okay, having done that, I hit equals. Actually, let's always look back through just to make sure it looks right. Yep. And you don't need any grouping symbols because it's always going to square before it multiplies, before it adds, because that's order of operations. Exponents before multiplication or division, before addition or subtraction. So there we go. 1878 3750. 1878 3750. 1878 3750. Okay, and while we're here, let's figure out the average real quick. X bar is equal to sum of this over n. And we have 30 bulbs, so it's going to be 23,700 divided by 30. And 3 goes into that, 7. 3 goes into that, 9. 0. 790. Okay. So, continuing with the textbook formula, we now can solve everything by putting in the values. N is 30. First value is 18,783,750 minus 23,700 squared over 30 times 30 minus 1, which is, of course, 29. So we're going to type that into the Alex calculator. Here we go. And actually, I'll keep that number in there. I'm going to hit square root, and I'm going to hit a parenthesis. I'm going to go 30 times, I'll just type it in, 18,783,750. Okay, minus, so 23,700. And we're going to square that. Now we're going to close the parenthesis, and we're going to divide that sum by 30 times 29. And when we're done, we hit enter, and it's 45.769. What do they want us to round it to? 1 decimal place at least. So we'll call it 45.8. 45.8. Okay, so we got that using the textbook formula. Now we're going to use the Alex formula, which is S equals the square root of the sum of the F times X minus XM minus X bar squared over n minus 1. So I gotta take 790 away from each of these values to figure out the sum of the F times X minus X bar squared is going to be 6 times 725 minus 790 squared plus 12 times 775 minus 790 squared plus 9 times 825 minus 790 squared plus 3 times 875 minus 790 squared. And that'll get me the numerator of this formula right here. I'm going to do that in Alex. Here we go. Let's do calculator. 6 times 725 minus 790 squared plus 12 times 775 minus 790 squared plus 9 times 825 minus 790 squared plus 3 times 875 minus 790 squared. And just going back through, this is how it should look. You don't actually need the times symbols, I don't think, but I put them in anyways. So you go through there. You're always subtracting the mean from the midpoint. And you get this value, 6750. Well, you're going to go square root of that value divided by 29, because it's n minus 1 on the bottom. And what do we get? 45.8 again. It's 45.8. There, I'll just hit explain. There you go. 45.8. So you can see I was correct. Okay, that's it. Bye.